Bahrain på en Skype-forbindelse. Let me ask you first, Zainab, how is your father today?
Actually, we have no news of my father today. The last we heard of him was yesterday, and he was not well yesterday at all. He hardly could speak, and he could hardly breathe.
We have just received a telegram from one of the news agencies where you are quoted telling that your father will actually continue this hunger strike until he dies. That was something he told you yesterday.
Yes, when he started the hunger strike, he named it freedom or death. And yesterday he told us again that if he dies, he will die with dignity and that he will not stop his hunger strike.
Also here in Denmark, we have heard today that the Bahraini Judiciary Council have refused to release him. Do you know why? Have they given any reasons why?
Well, the regime in Bahrain, basically, that's how they act with the Bahraini people. Whenever anyone demands freedom or justice or democracy, they punish them. They punish them by torture, by detention, and by death. And as Nabil Rajab said, they have already killed 80 people, tortured thousands of people. And to them, my father is just another person who represents those ideas, who represents freedom and democracy and human rights. And that's why they probably want to get rid of him.
But is he not becoming more also for the regime in Bahrain? I mean, the international society now knows who your father is, if they didn't before. Is he not becoming a bigger and bigger problem for the regime in Bahrain?
That is what we were hoping, because the Bahraini regime cares more about the pressure they get from the outside world than they care about our rights and the people in Bahrain. And before, years earlier, my father was arrested and released only because of the international pressure. So we're hoping now, because of the pressure that is on the Bahraini regime from the Danish government and from other governments and people, that they will eventually give in and let my father go.
But are you optimistic that this will happen in time?
I'm not optimistic at all at the moment. I've been arrested twice in the past 2 days. I was interrogated with yesterday 2 times just because I went to demand to see my father. So I'm not optimistic. If we just go to see him, they threaten us and they tell us we're not allowed to see him. They're not letting his lawyer see him. So at the moment, no, we're not optimistic.
The Bahraini king, can he give him a pardon or an amnesty of any sorts?
Because we're a dictatorship, everything is in the hand of the Bahraini king. And of course, if he wanted to, he could give my father a pardon. He has done so in earlier years as well.
But that will need more international pressure, or what is your take on that?
Yes, of course. As I said before, I don't think the government here cares if my father dies or lives. Actually, they might think it would be a good thing for them if he does die. And that's why the world should care enough and pressure them enough to release my father.
But do you think that the international society, I mean, let me rephrase that, the international society, many countries in Europe, for instance, are saying right now that they cannot apply any more pressure than they have already done. So what is the realistic scenario here, do you think?
I think they can apply more pressure. And I also think that because my father has worked so much for human rights, that's why the Bahraini government is becoming so stubborn about this, because they know that my father has given the past 20 or 30 years of his life to document human rights abuses and to educate people about human rights. That's why if it was somebody other than my father, they would have released him a long time. And because that's who my father is, that's why the world should care more and should put even more pressure.
One of the things that we're discussing a lot here in Denmark is, as you obviously know, the Danish Queen has given the Bahraini king a Medal of Honor earlier. The international kind of pressure that you are talking about, that you are wishing for, could that be it? Would that help, or are we talking something entirely different?
It would help as well. It has to be all kinds of things. I mean, there's different ways to put international pressure, but that's one of the ways to put international pressure on the Bahraini regime. And I think that for a dictator who's killing his people and gassing his people with toxic gases and killing children and older people and not allowing people to have any kind of freedoms, does not allow any kind of honorary anything. And I think the Queen of Denmark should take that back anyway, not just for my father's case, but for the cases of all the innocent Bahrainis who have been killed in the past year, who demanded nothing but democracy.
You were talking about before that maybe the Bahraini regime and the king would actually prefer if your father died because he's been such a thorn in their eye. What do you think will happen if or when he dies? I mean, the people on the streets, the opposition in Bahrain, we've been told, are getting more and more upset and more angry, and they will react very soon if your father dies. What do you think will happen?
I don't like to think about that possibility, but
of course not.
Yeah, but right now, what I feel is that all Bahrainis are my brothers and sisters, and they share our pain. I can see it in their faces. I can see it by what they say. And I see that the protests, thousands and thousands of people are going to the streets to demand that my father is released. And I think I wrote a poem once while I was in prison about my father's hunger strike. I think if the king digs a grave for my father and wants him dead, he will be digging a grave for himself and not for my father. My father, even if he dies physically, he will never die as spirit, and he has taught so many people here in Bahrain what it is to demand freedom.
There's a lot of focus on you and your father and your family, obviously, not only here in Denmark, but also on the international news agencies, CNN, BBC. Everybody is talking about you and your family. How do you feel about that?
I wish it wasn't for these reasons, but also I'm very, very proud of my father. My father has always been fighting for these concepts, and I know that he would be proud even to die for freedom. He always says that dying for freedom is a cause worthwhile. So I am very proud of him, but I hope that it ends with a happy ending and not a sad one.
Thank you, Zainab Al Khawaja, for having the time to talk to us this evening.